Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I think there might be a few more people joining, but we'll just kick off so that we're on time. We've got a really good session ahead of us. I'll give you a very brief update on short-term licensing at the end of this session. But in the meantime, I'm really delighted to be welcomed back. Patrick O'Shaughnessy and Chris Greenwood from Visit Scotland. If you've got any questions about the session, please do put them in the chat during the session and we'll have a Q&A at the end. Obviously this will also be being recorded. So if you want to come back and revisit any of it, we'll be publishing the video at the end of the session. So transformed travelers. We all know that changes in technology, society and consumer behavior have resulted in new traveler attitudes and behaviors. We've moved from a world where demographics gave us our insights to a place where we look to connect to our guests on the basis of their values and their needs and their behaviors. Today's traveler looks for immersive experiences and limitless discoveries where they can experience a different way of living for a short time in a new place. Digital relationships and connections have become more important to groups of travelers looking to share their experience of being well-traveled in their pursuit of digital and social reward. The demand for must-have experiences will continue, as will needs-must travel within the business travel market. In light of the climate emergency, over-tourism in a growing number of global destinations and geopolitics, ethical travel has risen in prominence, where travel is making decisions based on conscious and perceived impact. Short-term lets and self-catering holidays are vital to sustainable tourism in Scotland. Staycations, holidaying at home, not getting on a plane will all make a big difference to our carbon footprint on Earth, way beyond COVID-19. It's something we're all reflecting on and thinking differently about as we witness our planet in crisis. Self-catering homes are a solution to sustainability, not a problem. In 2021, we've seen a significant rise in domestic tourism since reopening in the summer. Many guests have chosen to travel domestically for the first time, and self-catering has been the accommodation of choice. While international travel is likely to recover strongly in 2022, I'm absolutely confident that we're going to continue to see strong demand for Scottish self-catering. So without further ado, I'm delighted to be joined again by Patrick O'Shaughnessy, Industry Development Manager, and Chris Greenwood, Senior Tourism Insight Manager from Visit Scotland. Chris, thanks so much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Fiona. As I just load up my screen for the presentation, as I said, my name is Chris Greenwood. I'm Senior Tourism Insight Manager at Visit Scotland. So if you're not aware, I've done presentations for the association before, but if you've not heard me before speak, I work in the research department. And over the next sort of 20 minutes or so, what I'm hoping to do is highlight some of the trends, data that we've got, and reflect on the fact that we've kind of moved into a new stage in this kind of current situation. It appears, hopefully, optimistically, that we seem to be past that period where potential lockdowns might be called into place, and people are now looking forward a lot more in terms of being able to embrace what the future is going to have. So with that in mind, we're going to be looking at some of the behaviours that we've seen develop over the pandemic, which ones are likely to stay and which ones are likely to sort of develop into the future. So I think first thing is to look at how global tourism has developed. Now, since 2020 and into 2021, it's been clear that international tourism has been impacted significantly. Localized and national legislation in terms of the ability to travel and to accept visitors has taken place, and we've only recently started to see places like North America open up for travelers from Europe. We've seen in the media that visitors particularly in the UK, are quite quick to embrace foreign travel when it appears. But the perceptions in the media aren't necessarily a reflection of reality, and it's been a boost, if you want, to people looking at domestic holidays. So the UNWTO, United Nations World Tourism Organization, has shown that we're still around about 80%, 85% down in terms of international tourism arrivals globally. But that's not to say that as we move into 2022 and beyond, those international markets will start to recover as national vaccine programs and the ability to travel across borders starts to open up, and that's been reflected in Visit Scotland's launch of international campaigns to promote Scotland as a destination. But certainly the focus has been very much on domestic tourism and the benefits that's had. So since May of last year, Visit Scotland has been undertaking a consumer sentiment survey for within the UK population. And it's a sample of around about 1,500 adults aged 16 and over. It covers the whole of the UK, and we do this in partnership with Visit Britain, Visit Wales, and Northern Ireland Tourist Board, London and partners. And over that time, there's been some quite consistent trends that have been going. But this year, if we take sort of from April of this year, the consistent trend has been that around about 25% of the UK population believe that the worst has passed. But that's tempered by the fact that 25% of the population think that the worst is still to come. But that leaves around 50% that think things are going to kind of remain the same. Now, as legislation changes come in place and announcements are made, those figures do vary slightly by a few percentage points. But on the whole, around about a quarter of the population are very pessimistic, a quarter are optimistic, but the majority think that the status quo is likely to remain, certainly towards the end of this year. The other thing that we've seen, and again, it's been constant since domestic holidays became available in the summer of 2020, was that for Scotland, rural and coastal breaks have proved particularly popular, especially for Scots residents. And as we heard from Fiona, commercial self-catering has been the primary preferred accommodation choice. Now, the reasons for that are perhaps quite obvious, in that people taking long breaks will see self-catering as a preferred option than maybe serviced accommodation due to the nature of the type of breaks that they're having. We're also seeing that, especially for Scots residents, self-catering has been the kind of principal choice due to the locations they want to go to, the types of activities they want to take. And I'm sure that many of you have looked at trying to adapt to a more flexible model of people wanting maybe shorter stays, longer stays, taking multi-generational sort of groups and more diverse groups of people than you possibly normally have. Cities have attracted mostly non-Scots, so rest of UK visitors, and for them it has been focused more on serviced accommodation. Well, we have seen that around about 2/5 of Scots residents and about a third of UK residents have taken an overnight short break. So that is down on, say, 2019 levels, and certainly not address the shortfall that we've seen from the lack of international visitors. But I think the homegrown market, Scots residents have really embraced holidaying within Scotland. We've seen that during this summer, so June to August, around about 11% of UK trips were taken in Scotland. And Scotland was the third most popular destination in the UK after the southwest of England, Devon and Cornwall, and Yorkshire. So Scotland has certainly been up there, and whilst the lockdowns that we're experiencing at the start of this year had an impact on that kind of spring season, Scotland was certainly there, and as in 2020 was the third most popular destination again. So if we expand out, in the sort of preface to this webinar, we said that there were three kind of key areas that have affected households as a result of the pandemic. There's been economic factors, there's been shifts in preference, and there's also been the digital acceleration. So, the pandemic really did launch an unprecedented financial shock, but it was unique in modern times in that it wasn't based on underlying financial fundamentals. It wasn't based on an overinflated mortgage market that we saw in 2008. It wasn't based on growing recession or consumer debt. This was very much a sudden deep drop in consumer spending as people went into lockdown and cut back on things like services, travel, entertainment, and dining out, which do make up a significant part of the economy. But we also saw that the impact has been very uneven. Employees and people that were able to work from home and maintain their jobs and higher income households were able to accumulate more savings and were kind of insulated from the effects, whereas lower income houses and people with jobs, particularly in the hospitality sector, were furloughed or possibly made redundant. And as a result of that, businesses were closing down. And for them, there's been a bigger kind of economic impact in terms of, job losses and financial insecurity. Now, on one hand, the consensus amongst financial analysts is that the recovery will be strong, but it is likely to be unequal. Now, Europe and the UK, with the interventions from government, have been able to even out some of the issues with that inequality, but it will remain. And again, the media has been quite prominent in showing that. That inequality is much greater in the US, where those kind of financial kind of safety nets weren't put in place. And I think that kind of highlights the difference between the European and US approach to this. But what we are expecting is that in terms of consumption, there could be a shift towards kind of more mature and richer consumer segments, because they are a growing share of the population, are time rich and cash rich, and will have accumulated possibly greater savings, which will be available to spend. But there could be a slow recovery in kind of lower income households. And it brings into question that the family cohort, which of course we know is central to the leisure offering for self-catering, it may be kind of divided between those higher income households and lower income households. So it's all about understanding the household makeup and the issues that they've gone through. So we've also noticed that the pandemic has sort of changed behaviours as well. So there have been sort of significant changes in how people approach things as they went into lockdown, came out of lockdown, people's attitudes towards risk, personal health, and how it reflects on their behaviours. And one of the questions that we need to ask is, what are kind of short-term behavioural changes and what are the kind of longer-term ones? Now, when we started to address this back at the very beginning of the pandemic, we started to recognise that there were sort of lower activity trends that were kind of quite niche that suddenly accelerated up. If you think about the growth in sort of digital media and in-home media and the growth of things like Netflix and Amazon and things like that, that's really kind of taken off and adopted. And something that existed in the past but wasn't necessarily fully embraced, and that's now kind of established. But the way that we kind of identify those kind of behaviors that are going to be short-term and maybe more established is trying to identify which are the ones that are kind of the behaviors that are forced upon us, and which are the ones that are actually quite satisfactory and improve our lives. And the ones that are going to kind of improve our lives and the ones we experienced that have proved to be betterments are the ones that are more likely to go into the future. So an example would be mask wearing, which I know is quite a provocative kind of area to go on, but the wearing of masks is mandatory inside buildings, and it's something that we do because it's legally required. But long term, as that legislation lifts and the perception of risks kind of ease as time goes on, we'll probably find that more and more people won't want to wear a mask because it isn't something that is particularly enjoyable, necessary, but not enjoyable. Whereas something like going for the in-house digital or sort of like online shopping, or supermarket deliveries is something that people maybe not tried prior to the pandemic, but have found that it's convenient, saves time, along with maybe home working or hybrid working. These are things that people have realized have improved their work-life balance and maybe want to continue with in the future. So some of the lasting behaviors that we expect to see is, accelerated digital adoption, particularly with shopping and healthcare. But also something we're calling home nesting, as our houses become our workplace, entertainment centres, educational establishments, and retail spaces. Our homes are going to become kind of more important to us, and that's where investment's going to be made. But that does provide fantastic opportunities for tourism as well. So the home nesting kind of trend is going to be creating quite open-minded sort of like attitudes towards leisure travel. People seeking new experiences to actually escape the home, go to new places, experience new things, maybe see new vistas, and get that sense of escapism. So people still remain passionate about travel, and the number of websites that have been set up based on armchair travel for kind of people to get people to be motivated and interested in different destinations and things like that are sort of like being driven forwards. So people still want to travel because they want to meet family, but they also want to travel as a family to create the memories that are going to last in the future. And we talk about kind of nostalgic tourism and setting up those foundations now. Of course, pet tourism and people who have been getting those lockdown pets will be looking for providers that would be able to take those on. Food tourism is increasingly important, along with activity and adventure, as people have been embracing new health regimes and focusing on wellness. But the more kind of novel sort of things are, as I said, people embracing home working and hybrid working are potentially the digital nomads who would like to travel but can work anywhere in the world. So they're looking for places where they can sort of set up with good network connections, digital connections, so they can get that that working but also leisure elements. But also rural tourism, as we've seen over the last 2 summers, has been particularly popular, as people stuck inside in cities want to get out and go into the outdoors. And I think originally it was for that perception of cleanliness, clean air, health, sustainability, but now it's about embracing the activities that they want to undertake. I've mentioned that wellness is a key driver, and it's certainly going to be shaking up our hierarchy of needs as that's being brought into the mix. But it's about those kind of digital channels that are going to open up those opportunities. And we talk about omni-channel engagement, so being able to engage with people through your website, social media, and building up a kind of cohort of followers that you'll be able to kind of engage with. Consumer values are going to shift as well, as people start looking about personalization, premiumization, and what we call kind of curated experiences, and being able to find those unique experiences that are going to engage them, even though your product is kind of fixed, it's bricks and mortar. You can still have that level of personalization to draw people in, to make them feel as though what they're doing is unique, and give them the experiences that they want and share with their network. So not dwelling on this too much, but in 2022 is the year of Scotland stories. And it is just an opportunity to go back to what is Scotland's brand essence. Well, Scotland is about selling the human, dramatic, and enduring. It's about the people, it's about the landscape, it's about the warmth of welcome, it's about the history and the heritage, and you can use stories about your journey, about setting up your business, your local history. It could be, sort of fictional stories, it could be folk stories, it could be local tales that engage audiences and elicit emotion. And it's emotion that is going to be driving people's decision-making into the future as they find that connection with travel and wanting to embrace that. And we talk about being driven by awe. And of course, Scotland is an emotional destination. And those are the opportunities that you can sell your property and take it beyond being a place where people stay, to being able to use it as a base to explore and engage and immerse themselves in the local environment. Just wanted to look at some case study trends that we're seeing in accommodation, and the four that kind of came out quite clearly. And these are just very kind of simple examples. There are many others. But there are trends around sustainability and values. So, showing your sustainability credentials, and that could be not only in the environment, but also within the community as well. And also a reflection of your values as a provider, so people can get that kind of emotional connection, to match their values with yours. And we know some great case studies of people who are sharing their story of how they built their business and what it means to them. We've got personalization adaptation, and here we've got a room that's based on the Netflix series The Queen's Gambit. And again, it's not necessarily going down to kind of these themed rooms, but you can certainly bring in maybe some elements of personalization, about understanding what your visitors want, and maybe gathering information about what people need in terms of welcome packs and things like that. We talk about historically rich travel, stories and destination, and we saw on the previous slide about using those stories to, engage people to explore and go deeper into the local area. And then wellness and health, and there's been a lot around kind of spas, sleep focused luxury, promoting the fact that maybe your property, if it's in an urban setting, is close to kind of spas and gyms, and being able to connect people there. But in rural areas, it's about open air, freshness, dark skies, switching off, disconnecting, those kinds of things. So starting to sum up, what are we seeing for the last few months of this year? Well, we're expecting around about a third of people to take an overnight trip in the last quarter of the year. And for Scots residents, that's around about the same. Scotland remains the third preferred destination after the southwest of England and Yorkshire, but again, Scots residents are over-indexed in that area. And again, they're looking for rural destinations, particularly Scots, whereas non-Scots residents are looking more towards cities. We're seeing that families and retirees seem to be the ones that are looking for that break. And of course, we're in the October half term at the moment. And the Highlands is popular for Scots, and I interpreted that more to be kind of rural areas as opposed to specifically the Highlands area itself, because of the way the survey was set up. But I was wanting to highlight the accommodation choice. So those rural intenders are looking towards commercial self-catering, whereas city and town is more towards the serviced accommodation. So just to finish up, what are the recommendations? Well, you know, as we go into the future and we're kind of facing what we're calling this new normal, we're seeing that tourist behaviours and preferences have changed, and you know, looking at your products to kind of meet those expectations that we've highlighted previously. People are looking for new places to go, new experiences, and of course what we're looking for is long-term sustainable solutions, so that you know, you can show that you know, your product is robust for those unseen events, and being able to plan for those. We're finding that price isn't a leading factor in deciding on travel and leisure. So, you know, entering kind of a price competition isn't going to be a key distinguishing factor. People are looking at the products, how it's promoting value for money. And people are also looking for maybe less crowded destinations. You know, what are the range of activities and attractions that are open, and also the hospitality options. So, you know, fantastic opportunities to collaborate with other tourism businesses in your area, so that you can lead on to this last one, which is developing a brand strategy through your marketing and communications channels, so that you can develop a broader package of curated activity that you can promote to entice visitors. So, you know, again, look at those stories about how to engage the customer to come and explore your area, you know, promote those things that are open to draw them in. Now, you know, we're going to hand over now to Patrick, and he's going to develop further some of the more practical areas with which being able to move forwards. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much. And as I said, I will hand over to Patrick.
Thanks, Chris. Some really good ideas, I hope, for everyone who's attending. I'm going to now look to share my screen. And whilst I'm doing that, just doing these practical things, I just want to ask you all a question. If you could just answer this poll, it's just purely to understand how many of you have seen my face or Andrew Craig's face delivering a digital fundamentals webinar to you. So that's a really helpful piece. So if you could just, if you've been on the end of one of our digital fundamental webinars, could you say yes? If you haven't before, no. That would be really great. Thank you. Mel is in the background working away our magic to see if we've got a result of that. She's going to share it so that I can then sort of talk to it if needs be. All right, there we go. So 58% happened before, so we've work to do, which is encouraging, but also that a good few of you have already attended. So I suppose the onus is on me to make sure that what I've got in here is new and interesting and leads from what Chris has talked to you about. So what are the, you know, clearly what Chris has been showing is some significant changes in what your visitors, how they think, what's important to them. What fundamentally is sticky behavior, stuff that's going to stay on beyond just now, and how, from my perspective, how you can then sort of turn and do some practical things that will make sure that it will optimize your opportunity to convert more business in the future. And the 6 areas I've focused in on are the user experience that people have on your website, and the reassurance you give. Google My Business, it's always important and always worth setting up, but then looking at it on a regular basis. Online travel agencies and their value and use. analysis, what data to look at, and finally content, which is one that we want to look at more and more in the future, and see how we can help and support you to do better and more focused content. So looking at anything you do in terms of marketing, there are three things you probably always either consciously or subconsciously look at, and that's what time have I got to give to this, any marketing? What skills do I personally have myself? And what can I spend to do it, either buying in skills or in terms of what platforms and what marketing that I can possibly do in terms of getting new customers. And that's the sort of the triumvirate of the cost of acquisition that we always need to look at in anything we do, even within these practical tips. So I want to sort of look at a task for you to do now when you get off this webinar, is take a real cold clinical look at effectively your lift pitch, which is the first homepage view, the first upload of your homepage view on mobile. Because I think most of you will find, and I'll touch on this later, is that your traffic that is coming to your website that is on mobile will have grown exponentially in the last few years, and grown even more so in the last 18 months as people use that computer that are in their hands more and more. And what I want you to look at is, in that lift pitch, are you clearly getting across the things that will connect in those 2 to 3 seconds that you've got to get your visitor to spend more time to click through. And these examples, I'm not holding these up as as particularly best cases, but there's some interesting elements to it in respect of, is the imagery right? Can you easily read the text? Are the actions that you want people to take from that page very clear, and the ones that you want them to do? And I'm guessing that most of you would want your visitor to go check availability, to book now, as a very important thing. So if you've got that as a key part, do you want them to phone as well? Is that critical? Is that something that's part of the way that you convert and think that's important? Or would you much rather, having spent time and investment on your website, that you actually get them to be able to click through, see the availability, and do the booking most easily? But also look at the wording, because those are, and it's one of the things I learned from doing the research for this presentation is actually the word cozy is used very, very frequently in self-catering, and you're not wrong. That is actually a much searched term, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. So that's first task, your user experience. What is it on that first page? And walk the walk is really what I'm saying for you to do. And one of the things that has really come across in the last 18 months, all of the big research houses, what they're coming out with, and Chris has re-emphasized that today, is that people have been exposed to buying online who previously never bought before. Online booking has increased exponentially in the last while. It will not go back. It's the one sticky thing that we know that will continue. So make sure that you have that you do the user journey on it, and it is really easy. It is amazing how many people can fall off on that last click through when you're looking for that booking and making sure that it's right. And you're looking at that sort of example. Every time I look at Eagle Bray Lodges in terms of their ownership of that first page, I'm always drawn to it to say I would love to go to that in terms of, and it's the imagery they use and how easy they make that journey. To help you out, just because it is very practical, it's very sensible things. We've done a webinar talking specifically about user experience. UX is what we call it. So user experience, have a look at that. That might help you to sort in terms of what are the steps you might look to do and improve. So that's tip one. The other one is reassurance, something that it has got many facets. Chris has mentioned the need for information and the huge amount of information that's out there. But there are things that you can practically do to make sure that you are reassuring people, and that's about that you have reviews, that you ask for reviews, that you do so on the platform that the visitor is most comfortable with. But you do want to have Facebook reviews, you do want to have Google reviews, and you do want to have TripAdvisor reviews. But ultimately, it's your visitors' comfort on any particular platform that will dictate as to which one they will use. So give them the option. And also, quality is a very important part of that reassurance element. So if you're quality assured, make sure you use that in as many places as you must necessarily. If you've gone to the bother of going to apply and get we're good to go, make sure you use it not just on visitscotland.com, where there's an example there in front of you, but that you actually use it on your other platforms as well, such as your website. And make sure that you're keeping that information around COVID up to date, that the dates don't suggest that it's a while since you last updated this piece. Keep it as factual, but also as current as you possibly can on your website. And one of the things you should be aware of is that all of the big guys, the Booking.coms, the TripAdvisors, they now give you the functionality to add health and safety information to their website. So again, one, they know that is really important, and two, it's an area that you can enhance your visibility just by going in there and getting those elements added to and correct and up to date. Again, we've done a really interesting webinar in terms of managing your reputation. There's a link on the left-hand side of the page. So when it's on YouTube, have a search for it. This is another piece I just didn't look at when I was doing the research for today. And on what I did was I put in, and this is an app which you may be familiar with called Google Trends. I think is really useful around looking at what are the search terms people are looking for, or what are the things that are relevant. And I put in, just because of that, cozy being used so often on people's websites, I put that in terms of the numbers. And because it's down here, it's the blue line, and you can see it's got, it has peaks, and it also consistently, when I drill down below that, it consistently is a search term. So you're right when you do use it. Snug, less so. Comfortable, less so. So those three sort of reassuring, warm, comfortable terminologies do have a consistency of use when it comes to self-catering and travel, and you can see how it's emotional, it's evocative, and certainly aligns with what Chris tells us. That sort of emotional pull is what you need to put across on your website. But then I put in secure, and it was, had little bits of ups and downs, but absolutely the most consistently hugely searched term. And we have to be careful here in terms of Google. That's also about safe playgrounds, safe driving, but ultimately it tells you something of your visitor's mindset. It's massively important to them about being safe. So it's massively important that you give them the information very easily in a nice way that makes them feel very secure and very safe in terms of being able to use your property and have a great holiday in the area that they're coming to, that is where your property is located. So go back and have a look and say, it's not a case of it was relevant in July, and it is still very much something that's important to people and will be one of those sticky things going forward. It will evolve in terms of what's important you tell them, but right now it's still important that you make them know, or you let them know that how they can have a safe holiday with you. And the third one is Google My Business. I mean, it's about verifying, and verifying will get you in this map. So you'll actually appear when people will have a look at the destination that they're going to and the options that might be there in terms of where to stay, where to eat, and then optimizing it. And that optimizing is about putting in as much your phone details, your opening times, albeit self-catering's open all the time, but still it's important that you put that in as a 24-hour option. But also Google allows you to put in safety measures. And a little bit of a pro tip towards you that might help you get into the 4-pack. This is the really important space. If you can possibly get to a point where you're getting into that top 4, you really are doing well. Is go to and there are other websites that do this, but you can get a keyword suggestion from wordstream.com, which if you put your homepage URL into, will come back with your top 15 keywords that you're using, and making sure, so these are the keywords that you've used working with your web developer to put into your website that are really important to what your visitor might want and search for. And they may have changed, so actually it's maybe worth looking at those again. But the ones that you currently have in, check them and make sure you're putting them into the description in Google My Business. So not to stuff them in there, to have to make sense, but just check that you're using the similar. If you're using Cozy, make sure you're using that. If you're using self-catering rather than cabin or lodge, that there is, that you're using the same wording, and that all will help optimize your Google My Business and help your ranking return when you do searches like self-catering and Isle of Skye. A little pro tip. Online travel agents. So we've talked about, one of the things that Chris specifically mentioned was our visitors have got a greater, they're looking for brand, and brand awareness is something that's important, so that they've got a comfort in being able to book and feel reassured that this is a legitimate business. Now, I'm not in any way suggesting that this is the main distribution channel you have. Your website direct is absolutely the best, most efficient, and best for you. But the reality is that the budgets these guys have and the brand awareness that they have means that there's a chunk of new business to be had if you use them wisely. So use it for acquisition, and then you move those new customers you've got into what I would call retention. In other words, you make sure they come back to you, come back and book direct with you. And that takes a little bit of time and effort, and goes back to that conundrum you always have. Do you have the time? Do you have the money to do it? And the skills. But ultimately, using online travel agents, and when you do it well. Use really good imagery. Make sure you take the time to work out your description. So again, using your keywords in there to maximize what you do, and always do it on your terms. So check the terms and conditions are right for you. So as I said, and absolutely, you should never use your online travel agents for what I would call your direct distress stock. Don't use it for those. I'm left with this this week. 2 weeks out, I need to sell it, and I'll sell it at 15%. That's not good practice if it was if that's how you see online travel. Use it to acquire new customers more in the longer term, but maybe shoulder period is would be your best option. So that's 4. Number 5, data-driven decision making. So that's fancy terminology for saying just go into your Google Analytics, do it with some specific things in mind. I think some interesting stuff that I think is worthy of checking just now is, where are your customers, where are they located that are currently searching on your website just now? What I've found when I've looked at other businesses is that that's changed, because people are actually searching much closer at your business than you probably are thinking. So is there good reason to sort of think about, should I be targeting closer to home rather than looking at much farther away in the southeast or whatever, that there actually is some new business. And one that links in quite well with that is the new trend, again, Chris mentioned on it, is this hooking a leisure visit, a holiday, up with you're working. So adding on a couple of weeks either side when one of the parties is actually going to be working. Speaking recently with Airbnb, they've said that's the biggest growth market that they currently have. So looking at your locations, where do they suggest that maybe this is an urban search that might be looking at that? Or is your property properly set up for that? Is there a good enough table that will take a laptop that's good Wi-Fi? But really importantly, have they got a nice view when they're doing that? Because that's what they don't want is a nice desk facing a wall, which could be anywhere in the world. What they want to do is feel that they're working, yes, but they've got the benefits of working on holiday at the same time. And in doing that, have a look at your top performing pages. Are there pages that you are surprised that are not in there? Are there pages that are doing really well, that are surprising you? And you learn from that, just from that look. And as I mentioned before, have a look at the growth of mobile. That's, it's quite easy to do. Go down the left-hand side of your analytics. It says click on it, and it'll bring through that percentage. There's a little icon. It's not showing here. Sorry, I clipped it off. It's like a little pie chart. It's just about here, a little bit right to that box, and it allows you to, if you click on it, it'll give you the percentages of your desktop, mobile, and tablet, which is I would be surprised if it doesn't emphasize the fact that you absolutely should be paying more and more attention in terms of how your mobile website is rendering on mobiles. And again, we've put together a webinar which will help you look at that analytics and how you can then get more customers from it. Looking at my final subject, just rattling through because I seem to have run over, is content. So this is an area we've not sort of in terms of our digital webinars to date. We're starting to focus on it a bit more. So create and publish more. Use our digital media library. There's a link in one of our slides that will take you out to that, and it gives you loads of great imagery and loads of videos you might be able to use. Two things that again links into what Chris talked about is things to do is something that people really want to know, and you as a self-caterer can provide yourself as a base, but really illustrate what great things are available to do around you. And you can see here the Lock Bay up in Steen. They've done it quite cleverly using images, and you just click through. So they're really got into the minds of their customer and sort of say what are the things they would really love to do, like go to the restaurant or go down to the beach. And then responsible tourism. One of the things that Booking.com have said in their research is actually there is great demand for responsible, sustainable products. And actually there are some great sustainable products out there. But what is really missing is the businesses telling the visitors what actually is available. So look at, if you've got a product, and it can be as simple as Chris has said, looking at your values and putting those across on your website to then link into the emotions and values of your business. Are you doing that in a way on your website that is visible? And I just sort of talk one thing when we do talk content, we tend to say, well, what does that mean? What is that? And here's an example by our own Melanie, what she's done. You can see in her imagery, she's really looked at something warm, cozy, putting across what she wants to do. It's her blog, so I'm encouraging you all to look at blogging. She's tapped into what her visitors are interested in terms of food and the quality of it. And she's also linked in with a local producer. She's collaborating. She's brought their Garcher tea gardens tea into her recipe, and she's giving that idea of some more other things that can be done and the idea of some great local food. So she's written this blog, and she's also at the same time, look up there, she's talking about, book now. She's still saying, I want you to book, and actually you can save by booking directly. Some clever stuff, some good thinking. And then the last option that I think everyone maybe doesn't think about is that just writing new content on your website, a new blog, it actually needs to get out there. It really needs your use of your social media to say, here it is, put it out to your other database, which is effectively your social media, or your database on your email database, and getting that out and getting that piece of content. And again, another little simple pro tip, if you are working with local businesses and mentioning them in your blog, make sure you tag them, because then they can they're going to appreciate the fact that you're actually talking about them, but they might repost it, and then you're actually tapping into their database as well. So it's a clever way of getting your content distributed. Again, we've done a webinar for you to which might be helpful to be able to work on more content. And finally, what I want to do now is before we go into the question and answer, some of you that have not been on the Digital Fundamentals webinar, we're going to launch a poll just now, which allows you to take advantage of a resource that we have. Our relationship managers will do a Digital Fundamentals review with you, which will look at the basic things that you could be getting right to make sure that you're leaving no money on the table. So if you're interested, for a member of our staff to contact you for a free digital review, there's a poll. Do a yes or a no if you would like, and we will get in contact with you to schedule a meeting, and thereafter we'll do some feedback, probably about an hour and a half at most, to let you know what are the sort of additional digital things you might like to do. So I'm going to go back to the main panel now and bring Fiona and Chris back.
Thank you, Patrick. That is so fantastic. Mel, well done. Top of the marks there. Gold stars all round for the ASSC star. Well, Mel, at least. Thank you so much, both of you. It's so important to have these sorts of insights in order to help us sort of navigate through the next short time. We can't look back anymore. We've got to look forward. And that doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing, but it does feel slightly daunting at times, I think. We've got some questions lined up for you guys. So I suppose just jump in, whoever wants to go for an answer. One's, I don't like pestering my visitors. I think they come on holiday to be left alone. How can I implement some of your suggestions without being too overbearing? Patrick, possibly you might be good for this one.
Yeah, and I think it's one that everyone has that quandary of that. Self-catering is seen as a getaway from it. We've talked about that, but ultimately it is also, you're a commercial business and you want those people to come back, and it's about simple things like as you would with any ordinary conversation, is you would do a welcome. You would sort of, and you go to a restaurant, how disappointed would you be if someone didn't come up to you and say, how is your food? It's the same thing with regards to, say, how is your stay? Is there anything additional we could do for you? And then try and keep that conversation going beyond that, so that if you can manage that, then therefore you're stopping the big guys, because that's what they really, really want, is that they will then re-engage and re-own that conversation if you don't do it. If you do it because you're the people that have actually met those and welcomed them, they will have established a relationship with you, and you're in a much stronger position thereafter. So it's about sort of seeing the need and then taking, and someone who doesn't want you, who say, look, I don't want to get your email on a monthly basis, give them the opportunity to unsubscribe. They've got the option, and if they don't, then great, you've got an ongoing conversation that you just need to create some nice stories to talk to them about ongoing.
Excellent. Good advice. Another good one. How can you restrict Google Trends to potential self-catering visitors? So, for example, you said safe also applies to playgrounds. Is there a way that we can channel people towards self-catering?
When I did that, no, it's, I suppose, what if you actually were able to do that, probably there wouldn't be enough data. So this is all the data that Google, in every single day, they fired into this database, and they allow you to drill down to it. So the nearest I could get is the UK, which broke it out into Scotland, Wales in a visual way. And then I was able to drill down into travel. So travel is the closest you can actually get to self-catering. So, and again, it's like most data, it's about sort of taking it not as total accuracy, it's about just sort of teasing out, actually, this means a little bit. So I quite often, if I see, if there's words that are, I'm not sure are the right words, just fire it in there. And then just the sheer differences in the volume of search versus a lack of search tells you a story to say, actually, this is probably, and then you just use your common sense and say, well, if my question is about caramel tea cakes, then definitely that's what people are looking for. It's about, yeah, it's a little bit of judgment involved in all of it, so, but it still gives you a really good picture, one worth using every so often.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's one. somebody concerned about huge hikes in pricing across properties in the summer. Do you think this is due to dynamic pricing or other factors coming into play? And is dynamic pricing something you think is going to be important going forwards? Maybe Chris could answer that.
Yeah, so we did see that, well, in my experience, it was more amongst the kind of, sort of corporate hotel areas that have revenue management systems. I think their pricing was based around the number of searches they were getting. And that was kind of accelerating up the prices. So people were looking ahead for holidays, and that was showing that there could be a latent demand. But then those prices kind of dropped off as you got closer to the actual time of booking, as the bookings kind of tailed off, and I think it was also highlighted maybe with the cancellation policies that were in place. So it was interesting, this kind of situation of dynamic pricing. And I think these systems that are being operated were causing those prices to fluctuate. Is dynamic pricing kind of a good thing? I think it is if you want to kind of fluctuate your demands. So as you monitor your bookings and you see maybe quieter periods and more busier periods, altering the price is something that put in place. And I know that many people have like a high season price and a low season price, but if you're kind of flexing your product to be more kind of shorter stays and longer stays over those periods, then you might want to look at dynamic pricing.
And just to add to that, Fiona, I think it's fair to say, dynamic pricing can work, needs at least 12 months of data to be able to sort of work properly. And it's fair to say the last 12 months have not been normal. So where you to sort of totally trust dynamic pricing, and I've been sort of monitoring this, you find a lot of people who've put in dynamic pricing have then manually gone in there and said, okay, I just can't, from a loyalty perspective, charge those sort of prices, and you bring it down. So it's about balance, it's about understanding your customer base. Also, interestingly, Chris's research has brought out that there is a percentage of enough to be targeting who will come back, who will have discovered Scotland for the first time, and will also do the foreign holidays, but will come back to Scotland. Now, if that's totally overpriced, you've lost your opportunity. So it's about getting the balance right. Enough for you to gain and some additional profitability, because it's not been easy, but also think longer term in terms of that retention and return.
That's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, both of you. That's just been so informative, and I hope people have had some really good take-home thoughts from that discussion. I'm just conscious of time, and I want to give everybody a brief update on short-term let legislation. So just thank you very much, both of you.
You're welcome.
Short-term let legislation. If you've got any questions about the legislation, pop them in the chat just now, or alternatively email melanie@assc.co.uk afterwards, and we'll try and compile some answers for you. We know this is all quite daunting and a bit worrying. I've actually had an email this morning from an ASSC member who is resigning because they have sold their property, and it is largely due to the uncertainty surrounding this legislation. So that's really, really worrying. Even more worrying is that the people that have bought it are going to be using it as a second home. So that property is no longer any use to that community or the local economy. So it's kind of fundamentally saying that people are actually doing what we're worried that they will do already. I don't need to tell you that self-catering is hugely important to Scottish tourism in terms of jobs, revenue, and obviously the world-class experience that we offer to our guests. We offer £867 million to the Scottish economy every year. And when we consider that most self-caterers operate small and micro businesses, that's incredible. Scotland's professional self-caterers are diligent, conscientious and considerate business people who are being unjustly accused of all sorts of things, which there is not a scrap of evidence to support. Last Friday, there was an announcement from the Scottish Government, and we welcome that the Cabinet Secretary for Housing has constructively engaged with us and is now listening to our members' concerns. Specifically, we endorse the decision to remove over-provision from the licensing regime, which we thought was a duplication with the planning policy that was already passed in February. This recognises that government's objective with the regulations is actually about ensuring health and safety across all short-term lets, not addressing housing issues. This is incredibly welcome. However, the devil is in the detail, and a number of important industry concerns remain. This includes the level of the licensing fees, the license duration and the renewal policy, the potential of additional conditions that a local authority may apply, and of course, the competency of the regulations. Most importantly, we're concerned about the disproportionate financial impact of licensing fees on small and micro tourism accommodation businesses who are still in survival mode due to the crippling effects that we all know about of the pandemic. Essentially, taken together, the licensing scheme proposals at a national level and the planning control zones at local council level are creating the perfect storm of uncertainty for small businesses. We do acknowledge that the Scottish Government has listened and acted and is genuinely appreciative of the revisions that have been made so far. We believe that these continued conversations will get us to a place that we can hopefully get this right. But we want to be able to be in a position to support the Scottish Government's final version and endorse it to our members and the wider industry. At the moment, we can't do that, but we're not far away. We also welcome the Cabinet Secretary's reassurance when we met with her on the 1st of October that the Scottish Government does want to get the legislation absolutely right. And we will do whatever we can to work with them to get the details of the legislation and indeed the guidance absolutely right to meet her commitment. So the question is, what can you do? Please keep an eye out on the ASSE news page. We're updating it all the time with really important information. Please write to your MSP again. Say that you welcome the movement from the Scottish Government. There's still unanswered questions that we have real concerns about and huge uncertainties that our small businesses simply can't bear. Also, you'll know, hopefully, that there's a Scottish Government Local Government Housing and Planning Committee survey out at the moment. This closes on the 29th of October. Details are on the ASSE news pages. This is our last chance to be heard. Thank you to every single one of you that's written to MSPs, submitted to consultation after consultation, that we've done so much to get so far and we've had changes made. And I'm really confident that we can carry on making changes to make sure that the incoming legislation is as palatable as possible. But just please be sure that you keep telling your representatives that we're still not happy and respond to that survey. It's really critical. So what's next? Next week, we've got an accessible webinar. Accessible tourism, you'll know, is a pillar in Scotland's responsible tourism strategy. Next week's webinar looks at why it's so important to be inclusive, and it breaks down some of the common myths. It's also going to provide some real easy tips on how to achieve accessibility for all. Doesn't need to cost a fortune. This is going to really benefit your business. So I would absolutely urge you to attend next week. And of course, on the 26th of October is our AGM for members only. And we've also got a destination leadership, responsible tourism for a sustainable future discussion with some really great leading experts and leaders of tourism in Scotland. We're looking at the challenges and opportunities post the pandemic, the new extraordinary, it's not even the new normal anymore, 2020-2022 future destination strategies, new emerging trends, and the role of DMOs in marketing and managing destinations. I hope that you can join us for both of those. And in the meantime, thanks so much for joining us today and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.